if you had to tell somebody in a minute, what's the difference between a 10-year-old's brain and a 60-year-old's brain? Like, what are, like, for us to visualize, what are some of the first things that kind of come to mind for you?
Yeah, so let's take boy brains just because that's easy to so 10-year-old boy, 60-year-old boy. 10-year-old boy has potential. Like he is still growing his brain as long as he follows about 3 rules in his teenage years. His mom's going to be a big part of that rule following. He can take whatever damage has been done to his brain, whether it is a seizure disorder or a baseball to the head, and he can practically remap the whole thing within a 6-month time period.
Wow.
The 60-year-old has certain areas of the brain that will never be the same once they're injured, but the timeline for it to repair or to remap something that's no longer working, like, a zing to the head that, changes the route, he's going to be 3 years of really, really
intensive,
disciplined,
laborious, like, effort.
And he's never going to, he won't reach the ease that 10-year-old brain will be able to remap.
We believe that you are strong by design, and you were made in God's image to have a strong body, mind, and spirit. You're listening to the #1 strength and health authority podcast in the world. So let's get ready to unlock your potential and transform your life in today's episode.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Strong by Design podcast show. We took over the director of marketing's office to film today and to record this conversation with the legendary Dr. Boz, who is back for the 3rd time here. So I'm so grateful to have her in the building again. It's always a joy to have return guests come back, because I just automatically know it's going to be a great conversation that's going to be very interesting and satisfying, just for me personally, but also for our audience. Before I get to introducing our guest, I do want to just take a quick second to say that, this year has been really an interesting year for the podcast in terms of major highs, record months and record days, and it's just really fun to see the evolution of the show, and to see it's a testament to hard work and consistency, which I think we can all appreciate, that when you stick to something and you just grind and you just keep putting in the time, that eventually it does become something wonderful and beautiful to celebrate. And that's what the podcast has become. And, we are into our 6th season, into our 6th year of doing the show. It started in May of 2018. Wow. And so and for us, we're not doing it because it's just like a cool business thing. We're doing it because we just felt compelled to have conversations that go beyond just fitness and health, and to have just meaningful discussion with experts in various capacities. And it's just a lot of fun. And I think that's where podcasters get it, who stick and stay with it, is they're enjoying themselves. It's a delight to have these conversations. So I hope you feel that on the other side. And, it's great to see the downloads coming in from all over the world, and 70 plus different countries that are listening to this.
That's amazing.
And to see those analytics, it's great. You see 50 downloads from this country that you're like, I didn't even know that was a country. Like, what is that? So it's really fun to see. So thank you for listening to the show. If you're a return listener, thank you for coming back. If you're a new listener, welcome, welcome, welcome. We love talking about the brain. Go back and listen to past episodes with Dr. Boz. She's, like I said, she's been here now. This is the 3rd time, and her other conversations are doing great, her past episodes. So if it's brain-related content that you're interested in, then go back and listen to those. So a proper introduction for our wonderful guest, because I said before we hit record, I don't know that I've ever really done you justice by, kind of setting you up with a real bio that just kind of, so I stole from her own website, so I know that it's good. Otherwise it wouldn't be there. So Our guest today, Dr. Annette Bosworth, we lovingly call her Dr. Boz. That's what she's been going by now for years, which is great. She's a doctor of internal medicine, or an internist. She's an author, a mother, a wife, a teacher, and a storyteller. I love that you put storyteller. And obviously that's part of what makes you unique. She was born into a farming family, as was my wife, in rural South Dakota, inheriting hard work and the expectations that all things are teachable. Throughout her medical training career, she applied her inheritance to teach patients through storytelling and practical application of medical jargon. As we know, storytelling is the most powerful way to deliver a message.
Yes.
That really sticks and resonates with people. It's memorable, right? And so that's why I think we enjoy talking with each other so much, because I get that from you 100%. Dr. Boz has worked as an assistant professor and medical doctor in internal medicine, helping students and patients combat chronic diseases such as obesity, diabetes, depression, addiction, and autoimmune problems. And through the DoD, which is the Department of Defense, counterterrorism, she teaches how to optimize brains and bodies with applicable neuroscience. And then you have a couple of books. The first conversation we had was based on that I think it was your first book, was Any Way You Can. It's the story about what her experience with her 71-year-old mother who was dying of cancer, and how they used keto to combat this situation that she was in. Her story of courage, faith, and tenacity sold over 100,000 copies and inspired many to improve their health through ketogenic nutrition. That's a great conversation. Go back and listen to that. That episode released in early 2022, so early last year, and that's a 2-part episode, as was our other one, which was released at the very end of 2022, which was marijuana and the impact of marijuana on the brain. And then you have another book, which is like a workbook called Keto Continuum, where you use a story from this gentleman, David's story, to capture your curiosity, teach you how to stay consistently keto. David was obese, depressed, and headed for a heart attack. Keto chemistry pumped life back into his brain, relationships, and business. I mean, you've seen this firsthand with your own mother. So, and you've been following the ketogenic diet for years now.
2015 is when I first started.
Right, 8 years now you've been at this, and you actually look like you're like Benjamin Button. Like I've met you 2 years ago, and you look younger now. I think it's almost like you're going back.
I'm going to pay you under the table for that.
So, but there is something to it.
Oh, it's totally, It is the chemistry process of how do you help patients stop doing what they're supposed to do in an internal medicine patient practice, which is they show up and we watch them age. And as they age, the list of problems gets worse and the list of prescriptions gets longer. But it doesn't have to be that way. Yeah. It's not easy, but it is absolutely I want to be the Pied Piper away from those chronic diseases, and nothing like really grasping my attention with my own mom, who was doing everything I asked her to do, but from her brain to her cancer to her whole energy was awful. It was awful, and to watch her reverse that. And she went, the funnest part about looking at her pictures, the month of her doomsday, like she had a 6-month survival rate. And then to see her 4 years later, she looked like she was reversed age by 30 years.
Yeah, that's unbelievable.
It was, and when it's not you, people say this to me a few times over the last year, and I'm like, huh. And again, I think consistency is really the key. But when it's your mom, and it was just the most rewarding. She'd walk through the door, and I'm like, oh, that's how I remember her, not the version she had become, which was cray. And
it's very painful for, I can speak. I lost my mom to cancer after years of battle, different places in the body where the cancer was going to. But I had an opportunity when my story is different than yours, of course, but I was approaching her health crisis with exercise and movement. And I was at the time a general manager for a fitness and health center, and not far from where they lived. We didn't live very far from each other, and the place where I worked was actually kind of in the middle. Mm-hmm. And so she would come multiple days a week, and I got to train my mom. And I remember my mom, for years I worked with her, and it was great. If I could go back and just have one more day working with my mom for an hour, then my stepdad would come and at the end of the session to pick her up, and we'd all go out to lunch together and just enjoy each other's company. And it was a really great opportunity. I'm very thankful for those years to have worked near her and to work in an industry and in a space where I was really preparing her for what was to come. Like, she had already had her initial health crisis. She had already had removal of half of one of her lungs from a spot that was found, and I was kind of helping her battle back. And then my brother had his own issue. He had brain cancer, and my mom moved up north to live with my sister-in-law and my brother to help take care of him as he was battling brain cancer. And having, done all this exercise and stuff with her for years prior to that, I feel like that really helped her physically and mentally. Like she was already a tough woman, but I think that really what really taxed her, though, was watching her own son succumb to this. And but I was just so grateful for that opportunity to work with her and see the power of exercise really help somebody come right at it. And it really is. It's the combination, the 1-2 punch of what can I do to eat better and really give my body what it needs, right, to be at its optimum. And then what do I need to do physically with my body to also get the most out of this, And when those two things can come together, you're a superpower.
Well, I think the other part of your story that is something I continually find more attraction to with patients, with colleagues, is there's this gift you've got that if you can channel it and apply it to your life, and then it gets transferred to the best places in your life.
Yeah.
That, I talk about storytelling and my inheritance of, my, as a hog farmer's daughter in the middle of nowhere, you had to learn how to help with plumbing, help with delivering calves, help with, castrating hogs, help, all of the things that I have on my to-do list that you can do. And, so I don't think I'm an expert at any of them, but they were all teachable. And when I hear you tell that story of your mom, it is, he mastered a skill long before you needed it to transfer to her.
Yeah.
And in that moment where you were able to help her and give her that momentum to be there for your brother, it's a gift that's priceless.
That's right.
But it comes from you saying, all right, what am I supposed to do with this journey? What's the purpose of my of your journey. Yeah. And when you take exercise, not just for your own benefit, but then to say, how do I help other people do that? How do I train them to the best of their ability? That same moment of transcending where I thought, I'm really good at teaching people, but there was never a time where I taught better, like I was more in tune. Am I doing this at the right steps, at the right amount, don't overwhelm, than my mom.
That's right.
And you're like, and without a tone of arrogance, but really a genuine, I mastered this skill. I am really good at that. Yeah. And that story of my mom shows, one of the proudest seasons of my life to
That's
say,
right.
Let's do this together, Mom.
Yeah, no, it does. It makes me feel good that I at least had that opportunity. That was a gift.
Right, yeah.
And, she's not here with us anymore, but I still reflect back on those memories quite often, along with all the other people that were older and aging. I mean, there's so many people that I worked with for 15 years that are no longer alive.
Oh, that's real. So how old was your mom when she died?
71.
Okay. And is your dad alive?
No, he passed at 62 in 2005.
Why?
Combination of what I think four things that killed him, or 5 things. Smoking, lifelong smoker, lifelong drinker, heavy drinker, massively depressed, having lost his 3rd marriage, two more things. On prescription medications, and I don't know how many different ones, but and really poor nutrition. Like not, eating like Campbell's soup every day and crackers and, grilled cheese sandwiches or whatever. That was probably his regular
1950s bachelor's diet.
Yeah. So it was a perfect storm of those 5 things that definitely, and I would say probably smoking was the worst thing that he could have done his whole life since he was in the military. Never quit. But yeah, I mean, it just shows you, it's like, I don't look at his life and his early exit as like, oh, that's what's it for me. I'm living a complete different existence.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
Well, when you look at brain health, for sure, you look at the 2 parents to say, what is the longevity of where are your obstacles coming your way? And there is nothing better than a family history to say, did anybody in your family live to 100? And then did they live to 100 with health? Because there's a lifespan and there's health span. Lifespan is, your heart's still beating and you're still in this place. But health span is, well, what was your life like before they died? And as I look at, impacting people's decisions, and they come to me, unfortunately, awfully late in their journey for brain disease.
Yeah, people don't look for help when they're fine, right? They wait till oof.
But when you invited me to do this, and I was looking at how many people have written into my channel asking about, will you specifically cover some of the exact questions you asked me, which is, all right, I'm not worried about my brain yet, but I think I should be.
Right.
What happens at the next chapter? And
right.
How do I predict this? Because it is such an incredibly, first of all, poignant question. You've got a roadmap headed for a great life, but there's a few things you can do to ensure that you're going in the right direction. And then it is the season that we're both in where you see the people we love have either died or they've lost the health part of their life. And they are living a life that you say, how do I not do that? And that has a lot to do with their brain health.
Yeah, the takeaways from not my mom so much, because really, like, to me, my mother did everything right. I mean, she really did.
I hope that's what my boys say.
She smoked, but she quit in the early 90s, and she stopped smoking, right? She never was a heavy drinker. She was always go, 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 service-oriented. I don't think my mom sat for 5 minutes when she had people over. She was constantly, what can I get for you? What can I get for you? What do you need? What can I get for you? Take this, eat this. Like, one of those ones. Like an Energizer bunny, just nonstop. But for my dad, I learned a lot of things like that things I don't want to do, but I don't want to paint them with a broad brush either. My dad did a lot of things. My dad was a hardworking man. My dad was a disciplined man. He there was a lot of things that he did right. He was smart. He had a good business mind. He had successful businesses. And so there's a lot of good things there too, that you can live a good life with hard work. It's just that he had a lot of like addictions and downfalls that certainly shorted him probably 20 years of life. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind. But what is it over your journey as an internist, as an internal medicine doctor for a few decades? What was it that really got you more interested in what's going on up here? Because obviously you're studying everything that's happening inside of our bodies. But what was it that you found a little bit extra intriguing when it came to brain function and health?
I actually just told this story about 2 weeks ago. I have interns for the summer from University of Tampa who are helping out with social media and doing.
Oh, fun!
It's been fun. They're young and they're so inspiring. Like,
that's great.
I remember
UT's a great school too. Now, from what I hear.
It's been great. They're really good. So they, you say, how does this internal medicine practice compare to others? And I said, well, I wasn't going to be an internist. Internal medicine is a great launching pad for several other advanced. Physician in and of itself is advanced, but you can be cardiology, you can be neurology, you can be ICU, lots of different organ systems.
Right.
But that wasn't what was in the plans for me. I got to the end of my residency where you get to pick the next chapter, and I'm holding a baby. And I said, okay, as much as I think this shock trauma and intensive care and head injuries are just fascinating, and the amount of collective team thinking that was happening around the bedside of somebody it's almost like a cuss word when you're in residency, the word shock trauma. It's the most deadly place for the patient to be, but as a student, it was the most exciting place for me to be.
Right.
You have this team of the smartest people in the hospital all around a bedside and
diagnosing this, picking it apart.
And it was great. It was this team of people that came together, and never, even since then, have I seen a better example of people who studied and learned what they were supposed to and brought it to actively apply in the moment. And it was awesome. It was awesome. But it wasn't as awesome as being a mom. So I said, I don't think that's a life where things are going to turn out like I want. I don't regret the decision, but I was hungry I got into outpatient medicine, and I'm in Salt Lake City, Utah, and, working the weekdays, running a little ER on the weekend, but no call inside the hospital. So I left this place where I'd only been, and now I'm outpatient only. So the environment's different. It's, go to work, go home, not call. Like, what is that? How do you do that? And I had a few of my colleagues say, we're doing a few studies and we need an outpatient physician to monitor some of the brain health of these Parkinson's patients, of some severely depressed patients. And so from the very beginning of my practice, there was this thread of brain research. Transcranial magnetic stimulation was one of the things they were studying, which is, have you ever had an MRI?
I have.
And
once.
When you're in the MRI, it makes this really loud noise.
Yes.
Well, that's the magnetic field signaling, and the cells in your body react, and they take a picture of that, and you can see different. It's a great way to look at the body without cutting it. But the magnetic stimulator of the brain is that same magnet, that powerful of a magnet, changing the field of energy in the brain, and it was being studied for Parkinson's. Michael J. Fox, actually one of the big philanthropists in the area of this research, but he was able to stay off of medications for about a decade by he had something that's not approved in the United States, but an internal magnetic stimulator inside his brain, keeping those cells.
Is that obviously that's because I've often wondered, because he's still with us,
right?
And he's been battling this, what kills most people within I don't know what the shelf life is for that.
Oh, it's terrible.
But he is still going. Now, it looks like he's still,
he's suffering. Definitely,
he's definitely suffering, but he's still there, and he's still thinking, and still
that's always
has all this wisdom to share.
Fascinating part about so I'm new in this, and they invited me in to do some of this research at about this, and like 9 months into my new life, right? And it's about the time where I was like, I didn't know that I had just said yes to saying to taking care of the highest female depressed population in the country, which was in Salt Lake City, Utah.
Get out.
Number one female depressed market in the country. And I'm like, gosh, all these patients are depressed. I mean, by about the third week, I started screening them. You got your blood pressure taken, your weight taken, go through and take this questionnaire, because either the whole world's depressed or I just have a really depressed patient population that I inherited.
And sure enough, that was it.
Yes,
wow. Who would think? Why there?
I don't know. The total market is only out depressed by Seattle, but they can blame their weather. So I don't have a good answer for that.
Wow.
But it was enough where I'm like, I was frustrated. Like, how do you fix depression? How do you I know how to fix blood pressure and, a head injury, but depression. And it became this place where if I didn't help them with their depression, none of these other things were going to get better. So about the time I was either ready to go back to residency and undo the decision I made, I had been invited into these teams that were studying advanced brain problems like Parkinson's, like depression and bipolar disorder. And I was able to just be around some mentors that were really great and were on the cutting edge of my career, really started in medicine in about 1998, so about the year 2000, and now we're at 23.
Yeah.
There's hardly a more intense time for improving our understanding of the brain. So my whole career has just been this layers of understanding for the brain. That's what we said last year, but we have new evidence that says what I told you last year wasn't true. And as humbling as that is to say I was wrong last year because there's new information, it's also so inspiring to say this is how hard we're working to understand what brains, what really sets them back, what drives them, and how to help an injured one get better. The Department of Defense, what they're looking at is, how do you not do the prescriptions? Because how do you do a workshop on, here's all the stuff the layperson should be doing to either heal a brain or make sure their brain doesn't end up in the nursing home for the last 10 years of their life. It's a great workshop. I love that workshop. But it's that first, 15 years of practice where I'm, doing what I think is right, only to be like, a nice right hook to say, we got a new plan, we got a new understanding, and that. So to constantly be improving my game for those 15 years of peak brain performance, like that's really what I couldn't get their diabetes better when they were depressed. When you talk about your dad having alcoholism and tobacco, well, I mean, the first things that I think of, I'm sure because of those first 15 years is, the atrophy, the shrinkage of his brain because of those choices. Yeah. The depression came from those behaviors. The depression can only be reversed by, working on those behaviors, but a whole bunch of other behaviors that will have to be implemented if he ever wanted to get his brain back.
Wow. Mm-hmm. It is the one organ of the body that, it's like only so much curiosity is going to happen with the kidneys or with the spleen or the pancreas or the heart even or lungs. But the brain is just so... there's so many layers to it, and there's just so much to learn about it. There's so much we still don't know, and there's still so many question marks, even for people who are decades in working in that area of the body. So, I mean, I understand where my intrigue for it comes from. So I can only imagine where you were, the company you kept, and the experiences you've had. I think you just create momentum when it comes to that curiosity and that wanting to get answers and the unknown, and it's like exploring the universe. Well, the brain is just so endless.
And the hardest part about chronic disease management, like that's what internists do, right? That's what I said yes to when I said I wasn't going to go on. I'm going to be outpatient. I'm going to help folks age in a way that if I do my job, they will give me no credit and they'll say, okay, I'm done. But if you miss a step, or if things don't go well, or if they have some setbacks, then your job is to try to get them back to baseline or try to get them to age the best they can with the setbacks they have. And there has been no organ that has captured the whirlwind of from functional MRIs where, we can put you under an MRI. I can put a smell under your nose and ask you, hey, Chris, what's that smell? And before you come up with the smell, I can see that you know the answer.
Wow.
And you say, oh, right, there's that part that's lighting up. And I say, wait, don't tell me.
Yeah.
And then I'll say, can you speak a second language? And the answer would be yes. And I say, okay, Chris, think about that smell in your other language, and you can watch a different area of their brain. It's cool.
That's just crazy.
And by the amount of area it takes for you to think in the second language, we know what age you were when you learned the second language.
Oh my gosh, dude. That is cool.
Yeah. And as you watch them then say, okay, as soon as the smell is being curious, it's in one area of the brain. But as soon as they find the vocab, the word that belongs to that in the correct language, you can see a different area light up. Like, oh, I know he knows the answer now, or what he thinks is the answer. Anyway, so those are the kinds of ways where we can study the brain, how fast it grows, what it becomes, and it's given me a ton of passion. I turned into that mom who volunteers to always give the drug talk at school. And it wasn't just,
my mom's coming to school again. and talk about all the stuff we shouldn't do.
Right. But I would show brain scans.
Right.
I would show brain scans of what does your brain look like when you do this.
But that resonates with the kids.
Totally. It was just the funnest way to say, let me stand on the shoulders of all of these researchers of looking at the brain and give it to the next generation to say, if you think that's good for you, let me show you what this does. And of course, I pray for my kids to make these right decisions. And it's a testimony to say when they have the right information, they do make better decisions.
Yep.
You think they're not listening, but they were. And so to watch my passion for, what is the commodity of, I took over this practice and some of them were 80. And I had an 86-year-old on the first week of my practice we're in Salt Lake City, Utah. She skis at 86. She was in the best shape. She was living life in a way that was better than some of my 40-year-olds.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, I want what she's got.
Yeah.
And so as you study these patients and then you're in this real churn, it's like cyclone of information on brains, it really has been a blessing to say, okay, here's some rules. Here's some rules about what to do and what not to do. And you're right, smoking is one of the toughest things on the brain. Yeah. That's not to say nicotine's the enemy. It's that tobacco was the enemy. Yep. And the next part is that there are several toxins that really do inflame the brain and really age it faster than it should. Yeah. Alcohol's on the list, especially when it's in that high of amount.
Right.
And then there's blood pressure, and then there's, we can go on for a
Sure, of
list.
course, it's endless. What are some of those more, say, obvious, or like, if you had to tell somebody in a minute, what's the difference between a 10-year-old's brain and a 60-year-old's brain? Mm-hmm. Like, what are, like, for us to visualize, what are some of the first things that kind of come to mind for you?
Yeah, so let's take boy brains, just because that's easy to so 10-year-old boy, 60-year-old boy. 10-year-old boy has potential. Like he is still growing his brain as long as he follows about 3 rules in his teenage years. His mom's going to be a big part of that rule following. He can take whatever damage has been done to his brain, whether it is a seizure disorder or a baseball to the head, and he can practically remap the whole thing within a 6-month time period. Wow. The 60-year-old has certain areas of the brain that will never be the same once they're injured. But the timeline for it to repair or to remap something that's no longer working, like, a zing to the head that, changes the route, he's going to be 3 years of really, really
intensive,
disciplined,
laborious, effort.
And he's never going to, he won't reach the ease that 10-year-old brain will be able to remap. And so the flexibility is really the best word, pliability, and that give them a stress and watch their brain adapt to it. That 60-year-old, they can adapt, but how well they adapt is going to be, well, what's their brain been doing for the last 6 to 12 months? And if it's been in a constant state of injury, a constant state of, high cortisol, stress, all the kinds of things that, we think are good for us, but in excess turn out to be really toxic for us. That 60-year-old brain is not flexible. You look at some of the testimonies from, I love Michael J. Fox's story because he has this chronically deteriorating brain disorder. It is more common in men than women, and his started in a much younger age.
He was in his 20s, was he not? Or maybe cusp of 30?
Yeah. And, at first, I think that was erroneously, given to a tremor and not really the brain disorder it turned out to be. But 10 years of life of brain expectancy once diagnosis, that's typical for Parkinson's. he's at 40 years of dealing with this now. Or maybe it's in the 35s, but again, way beyond expectancy. And so you say, what did he get? He does have a lot of financial resources to do the things that he needed to do, but I have lots of patients with lots of financial resources and they don't do the things they needed to do to course correct it. So having his elder brain, and still, how disciplined he's been to try and keep it as functional as possible is a testimony to say that's what we've learned in the world of us, 2.5 decades of brain diseases. And it's also what the 10-year-old doesn't need anybody but a good mom to help him get out of if he had, his potential at 10, And, the potential at 60. 60 is going to take a whole universe of resources of medical professionals and lots of advanced, shepherds to get them to do the right thing. The 10-year-old just takes a good mom and some good rules.
Isn't that
so
something?
Such a difference in easy to fix, difficult to fix.
Yeah. Which I guess can be applied to a lot of different parts of, like how your body functions at 10 versus 60. But it's interesting to think of a young brain and a more mature brain. And the young brain is just very adaptable, as you said, flexible and quick to make positive improvement if it's been trauma or injured in some way. So it's
one of the first places I mastered storytelling was when I was in charge of middle schoolers in a what would be considered like a foster home. So shelter is the word I use, but their parents were not in a season they could help the kids, so they were in this place. And I was helping out Medicaid by seeing them as their physician, and I got to see some brains that weren't doing so good, and they're 12 years old. And once a week, the organization, the foster home, would give a medical lecture. And the nurse was trying to do that. And I said, why don't you let me take this over for about 3 months? You got a lot on your plate, and I like to do this. So I mapped out a little lectures that teenage brains are happening to them, that these kids they liked the stories. So the first lecture was on the hippocampus. And we ended up doing the cycle over and over again as new kids would come in. So more people heard the hippocampus lecture than probably any of the other lectures. But the hippocampus is this you've got two of them, or hippocampi, one on each side of your brain. And
right in the middle, like deep in the middle of the brain.
Very primitive part of the brain, so really protected from the outer layers. But as you look at that 10-year-old, especially a boy brain, it's a couple years before puberty. So it's in preparation for a growth spurt that you'll never get to do again. But I would have these multiple choices where, as a group of 4 or 5 kids, they would get to scratch off the right answers until they found the right one. And one of the questions was, what does the growth of your hippocampus predict? And there was several of them, and it predicts your IQ. It predicts your creativity. It predicts whether or not you'll have sustainable relationships. It predicts your finances. It predicts whether or not you'll be successful in life. And then the bottom one was all of the above. And the right answer is all of the above. That the hippocampus is a place in your brain that when it grows in utero, and then right before puberty, it starts to grow longer and thicker. And this
came up in our last one because you were talking about a long, thick hippocampus. Yes. Is a good thing, and I was laughing. And
so when you look at how much that hippocampus can transform in the 2 to 3 years of puberty, right as they're going through puberty, and you think, oh, as a mom, I have very little forgiveness for my kids about this time. Like, you have gone through these rules. These are the plan. Why are you being so stubborn, so obstinate? And as soon as you watch to see how many things are going on in their hippocampus, you want to figure out how to model the behavior you want them to be, because they are learning so many things from how you respond to them.
Wow.
The 60-year-old, he's going to be a stubborn one to change.
That's right.
That 10-year-old, have a good example in front of him. Get the best examples in front of them, because they will model that behavior by watching them.
Wow. So my son, being 11 going on 12, he's right there. He's right there. He is in the midst of growing his long, thick hippocampus. So I need to be a good boy and really give him a good
same-sex parent,
role model.
Everything you want him to do in life, you just need to model that behavior for the next 2 years.
All right.
Good luck.
No pressure. No pressure.
How old is your hippocampus?
This is my. I'm going to do the sound of a freshly opened Celsius right up close to the microphone. Ready? Let's listen.
Oof.
Wonder if I even got the
I could hear it.
The sizzle. What's funny is, hey, you know what I should do? I should do this. And this will get, I dropped my questions. This will get Steve scared. Because I forgot to bring the brain in.
Oh, yes.
We have a brain.
Oh, that's
Ready?
so cool.
Steve! I need the brain!
Hold on, bring the brain.
Go get the brain!
Perfect.
I do. I have a brain,
That's
and
so awesome.
I forgot to bring. I'm mad at myself, but I'm not mad because
that's
funny.
great.
We're not looking for perfection around here. We're just looking for real. Mm-hmm. And we have a real brain. I forgot to bring the brain in, Steve. Steve, wave to our audience. Come on. It's okay. That's Steve. Oh, wait, you dropped
the cerebellum. It's only the left cerebellum, so we're good.
Okay. So
this is
I hope you know how to put it back together. So there you go. So obviously we're talking about the hippocampus. Do you want to?
Yeah, we can find it in here. Yes. So hippocampus is going to be right here. This part right there.
Yes,
is going to be the hippocampus.
It looks like a seahorse.
Seahorse.
Right?
Yep. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it again deeper into the brain, the more protective, the more. Actually, it might be on this side. Right where they open that up. It's a great example, though.
I love that. So now you got to put it back together. Mm-hmm. No, you don't have to.
No,
so you can just leave it in pieces. It's funny because it's like a puzzle. It was all apart, and Mike came in, right? I don't know why he took it apart, but he came in with all the pieces, and he goes, "I can't figure it out. You do it." And then I sat there for a good 10 minutes because you got a left side and a right side, and I'm trying to fit it all in the right way. And anyway, it's just comical, really.
Well, honestly, though, it is fascinating. And the puzzle part of him is his brain is stimulated by a broken brain.
A broken brain.
But if he gets the puzzle figured out, his brain's going to be a little bit better.
Couldn't quite get it back, but I did, and but it took me some time. But it's fun. It's fun.
So where'd you get this, by the way? This is.
I think I just got it through Amazon after hunting for a little while, because we actually have coming later this year. We actually have a brain health supplement. I think I might have mentioned that it's seven different ingredients called NeuroThrive.
Okay.
And it won't be available till a few months after this episode airs. But maybe actually not even that long after this one airs. But there's proven ingredients in there that are beneficial to brain function and brain health, cognitive function. So, but speaking of that, in your and if you want, you can always put the brain back down here, but you can hold it if it makes you feel, just comfortable. Yeah. You feel extra smart just holding it.
This is so fun.
It's always cool. I love it. It actually sits proudly on a little stand in our break room. But when we filmed, we made a video sales letter, a VSL, for this supplement, and I'm actually the talking head for it, so to speak. And so the brain is behind me on the background on a bookshelf.
I might have to rent it for a day.
You can borrow my brain. You can borrow my brain. Now, in your time working with people, and there's fear obviously associated with aging. Would you say that people are more fearful of just getting old for getting old's sake and the troubles that come on with getting old? Or would you say that people are more fearful of like brain deterioration or brain loss of function or mental health issues?
The brain is the key to that. The aging process is what you want. The other option was dying, right?
Dying, right?
So when you look truly at the fears that they struggle with and they bring to the clinic and they bring, they try to find the words that you're asking, and then when you can ask it back to them in a much more succinct letter, their eyes, like, that's what I'm worried about. It is how well will I be able to use my brain as my, and that gets back to that lifespan, health span, where how long you'll live is one thing. Medicine has a great way of keeping people alive today. It doesn't have the best prescription habits to get them healthy.
Yeah.
In fact, the way our model is designed right now, it's like the more you see the doctor, the worse your health usually is.
Well, yeah, right.
And I mean that, like, I'm a part of the problem, but
there's not obviously there's a lot of opportunity for people to do preventative care for themselves.
Yeah.
It's just that we're not set up that way to make that the focus.
The model that is in our country is when you have disease, I will show you how to have a little less disease, but it's still the disease that we're talking about. To do the prevention, I mean, I remember the first couple of years in this practice where there was such a gap of understanding of how these elders, I took over a practice of a retiring physician, so most of his patients were 60s, 70s, 80s years old. And there was such an information gap that it was suffocating to me. Like, how do you not know some of this stuff, right? And I started doing workshops after hours, and we packaged it in, come meet the doctor. But I'm like, if people are gathering around to hear me talk, I'm not going to talk about me. I'm going to talk about the stuff that insurance does not cover me to teach you this. And if you don't know this, I can't help you. You have to do this part. My prescriptions are a Band-Aid to get you from point A to the other part. And that distance is a bunch of education and behavior changes that have to happen.
Yeah.
And there's no space for that in today's medical practice. That my YouTube channel happened.
Which is, by the way, congratulations with that, because I was just looking at it. It's really doing well.
Yay.
It's growing. All your content going up is getting a lot of views. So congratulations
been
on
a
that.
blessing. Like I still can't tell you how did we do it. I don't know.
Oh, I know. You're committed. That's why.
Right? Yeah.
You're persistent. Yeah.
I mean, you look at what I have really framed that YouTube channel to be was at the beginning of the journey, it was a frustration point saying, I am not going to explain this one more time. I did this last time. You don't remember anything from what I did last time. Yeah. And now I'm going to have to do it again. I need you to learn this without me. And you try to outsource it to people, but the level of education that was, I needed them to know. Like I couldn't depend on the sleep specialist teaching them what they needed about sleep. So I did a sleep YouTube video. I said, you can't come back until this worksheet's filled out. The answers are in that YouTube video. And they would have to watch that video well enough to fill in the blanks. Wow. All right. So I'm like, oh. And it was relieving. I'm like, I've got it. It's free to them. I can't bill for it. I mean, Medicare, Medicaid does, and any insurance says if you do prescriptions, if you do disease management, we can talk. Prevention, I'll let you do that once a year for 20 minutes. I'm like, I can't do it. That's not possible. So the YouTube was this relief button. Like, oh, so let's do another video on something that annoys me.
That's right.
Not annoy, but like these patients need to see this. They need to hear it in a way that's engaging, that's not like fake news. Hey, you should do this. But let me tell you a story about what happens to this patient.
Yeah, this is natural. This is very real. These are pain points that experts have in their field where they're really well versed, and they're constantly having to get the same point across to more beginner, entry level, novice people. I used to go through that too as a strength coach or trainer. It's like, no, you don't even know how to do anterior and posterior tilting of your pelvis. Like you're never going to be able to do a deadlift or these exercises. So all right. And it's frustrating because you got to do it with everybody. Yes. And they're all have the same troubles, the same sticking points.
It is like Groundhog's Day.
Yeah.
Because they have the same questions. They have the same. And the frustration is a testimony of, can you just hold the course realizing they don't know my point of view and they don't care about my point of view. Right. They want better. They want health. Okay. So that journey forward began with, okay, so how do I take this level of education and keep going? So YouTube is one of the places where that has been, I love it. I love doing it. I love teaching about it. Well, it's educational and entertaining. Mm-hmm. And if you can bridge those two things together about pretty serious stuff like your health, function of the body, function of the brain, function of your organs, longevity, all these things that you're talking about, and like what we do with we just want people to move more in life, because when you move, life is just better for everything, for how you think, how you function, how you feel, all these things. And it's just free, great stuff that we just are capable of pumping out because we're passionate about doing this for people. It's like who we are, right? It's just if we didn't have this
ability to reach people through YouTube, there would just have to be some other way to do it.
Right.
There would have to be another platform to do it. So this is a gift for you.
Yeah. And I have learned there's so much animosity between patients that are hungry for help that, having an option where good content for free seems like, well, why would you do that? And I've continued to tell my team that not only is it a relief point for me, like I have a place where when a patient asks me a question, I can say, I need you to watch this video I made 2.5 years ago. And those damn slides took me 4 weeks to make.
That's right. That's right.
But they are great. And you can watch it 5 times, where when you're done with that, you're taught to the level that I need you to be at to be able to do the next 2 steps.
Right. Now when we talk, now you're like, oh yeah, I remember when. Okay, now I get it. You know, it's like, now we can get to that next level of your treatment or of your recovery, or we're not just fighting the same symptoms over and over. Bending over backwards with the same problems.
No, it's real. It's
Band-Aid fixes for wounds that need stitches.
And when you are working with brain injuries or brains that aren't working well, they come in probably a lot like your dad was maybe 10 years before he died, which is they don't know the dangers that's ahead.
Wow.
But I can see it with a just neon sign. And you can't make people change, but when they come to you in a moment where they're ready to, make it as stinking easy as possible to say, here's what you need to learn. I'm not going to overwhelm you. Here's 3 videos that I need you to go. I'm going to go into the next room and see the next patient. You sit here and watch these 3 videos and I'll be back.
Wow.
And that teaching is then they go home and they tell their kid. They go home and that I don't think that's how you grow a YouTube channel very well, but it works for me. That these videos help them to say, here's what she was teaching me. And now you can't change behavior if you're the only one in the forest that's changing. You got to have at least understanding of the people that are in your support system. Yeah. So then I would have exam rooms filled with people coming saying, all right, Dad says you're telling him to do this. And I'm like, yep, you didn't all need to come in, but okay.
They're all there.
They're interested. They want to help him.
Yeah. And
they say, okay, there's better ways to do this. And so, but that foreshadowing of how do you see danger coming, it's because people they are very fearful of, and they should be. There's one organ that we can't undo. When it's not working, it's going to be a huge life setback. And my first job when I was still living on the farm was I worked as a nurse's aide in a nursing home.
Oh, wow.
And my dad says, if you think you want to be a doctor, because nobody in the family had gone to a 4-year college, let alone medical school. And he goes, you go work at the nursing home and see if you like that. And what I saw was, what does it look like to be old? My job was to clean everybody's dentures. I still to this day have a fear of losing my teeth. Like, oh my God, I floss your teeth, people.
I can do better. I go into moments where I'm great and then I'll be not good, but I use one of those sonic brushes, which I think does a better job than a regular toothbrush at really getting stuff out, but I can do better flossing and my dentist will tell me, or my hygienist, I should say, when I'm flossing well, she'll notice or give me more compliments. And I'm like, all right, I got a dental appointment coming up, so I got to at least put in a good word.
Those dental floss toothpicks as you drive home every day.
Well, that's true too. That's one easy way.
And it's not something fun to do in front of other people, but in your car, just
you can just do it while you're driving. That's good point.
In that, what does it look like to be old? These people so you'd have this debate on the nurses in the nursing home. What's better, to have a physical ailment that puts you there, but your brain still works, or to have a brain ailment and you're walking around happy as can be?
Wow.
And because there were people who had a stroke or Parkinson's, and they were there. They were inside. They had a brain that was working. They had a body that had given up, and you're trapped. And I can remember this lady named Beulah. Yep. Beulah taught me so much about what I didn't want to be when I grew up. She was super anxious because she was trapped from a stroke. She was really smart. She had all kinds of awards and degrees, and I mean, not quite a Nobel Prize, but it just had really been a expert in her world. But her stroke was severe. Whole side of her body was paralyzed. And so she couldn't make her body do what it needed to do. She had to communicate, but she couldn't speak. And so she would just get so mad. And I'm new. I'm trying to figure out what the heck her garbled speech is trying to say. And she's just so angry. Like,
oh, man.
And she's trapped. And that I'm not the first new person she's had, because she'd already been there for like 10 years. 10 years of trapping. Like, just get your head around that. So when people have this fear, it's usually because, and I think that we're in the age where either parents are doing things that make us say, oh, snap, that does not look like, I don't want to do that. How do I not do that? And the prevention has got to have a long runway for brains. You don't when people come into my office and they say, I think my memory is going. And we get past, okay, you left your keys you walked in the other room, couldn't remember what you went. Okay, those are short-term memory. You're usually distracted. But when there's real memory issues, like, let's see if you can draw a clock and make it say, put the numbers on the clock and make it say 3:25.
Ooh.
And I don't mean a digital clock. I mean the clock with hands.
Right.
And you're like,
analog people. Yeah. Well, I can do that. That's easy.
Right.
Yeah.
But by the time that skill's gone, you are 15 years too late.
So that's like the difference between what they call mild cognitive decline, which is maybe things that you're noticing, little things that you're noticing in your day-to-day.
Mild cognitive decline is where the clock doesn't turn out right.
Oh, okay. So they've already progressed. Sorry. Okay. So I'm trying to think.
You're saying the same thing.
So they've already gotten to that level.
But nobody asked them to draw a clock. They don't realize there's parts of the brain that that have to be in communication in order for you to do that skill. You have to draw a circle. You have to know the numbers. You got to be able to separate it out.
Right.
Okay. So maybe they can draw a clock, but there are a few other things in a test that should never be abnormal. Missing one of the questions is abnormal. That's mild cognitive decline. In mild cognitive decline, you're 15 years in. In severe dementia, you're 25 years in.
Okay. So it's the precursor to mild cognitive decline where
you say,
where you can kind of take action and maybe overcome some of these, or at least prolong them or push them out further. And
I like the word prevention. I think people have, there are some things that make your risks higher. So there's a gene, ApoE4 ApoE is it's a lipoprotein that carries around cholesterol in your body. It specifically delivers cholesterol across the blood-brain barrier. And you got a gene from your mom and you got a gene from your dad. If the ApoE you got from your parents is 3, and you have one from mom and one from dad, then you would be an ApoE3. And those are most of the population. If the genetics you got from your dad was an ApoE4, it has a much higher and earlier onset of memory problems. If you happen to get an ApoE4 and an ApoE4 from mom and dad, that's the people who can get a Alzheimer's presentation in their 50s.
Oh my goodness.
But they don't have to. There are people with ApoE4, a pair that are over 100 years old that are still functioning normally. But they do things differently than the rest of us.
Okay.
And that's the prevention where you're just like, there's some rules. There's some very clear rules about brains. Number 1, don't smoke cigarettes. Number 2.
we got that, okay, kids? So I doubt there's many kids watching, but I taught my kids think smoking's the absolute worst thing in the world because my wife is just beside herself. She hates it. Hates it. Both my parents smoke. So, we've made, hopefully, God willing, the kids just have, it's just not an option because they see it's a disgusting habit and you're just killing yourself and we don't do it. So obviously that's good influence. So anyway, back to where
Number
you're
2 is the persistent years you've slept well.
Ooh, sleep is the next
thing on the list.
Which is your body's ability to repair,
Amen.
recover, replenish everything. All the good stuff happens right when we fall asleep, right?
Yep.
It's like the janitors come into the high school and is cleaning the hallways and cleaning the lockers and cleaning the classrooms and wiping it all down so that the school looks good the next morning when everyone shows up for school.
Right.
And if we don't allow that to, it's going to be filthy by Friday if we don't allow the janitors team to come in and clean it all up.
Yeah, and where I find the biggest breach in education for my generation, for many of the people that I call friends and family, that the lights turn on in your brain at about 5:30 in the morning. Cortisol wakes up your brain and your body. And I don't care if you do the night shift, it still has a cortisol rise to wake up your brain in the morning. So if you don't begin sleeping until midnight, your brain still says sun rises at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
You got to get them to bed at an early enough hour to get the 7 consecutive hours before the cortisol rise in the morning.
Thank you so much for listening to the Strong by Design podcast. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe so that more people can find out about our show. Plus, you don't want to miss any future episodes with the amazing guests and topics we have lined up for you.